So apparently today marks the 2-year anniversary since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and today we're going to be discussing what that has meant, and right now we're going to be looking at, the remarks of just, the modern day, reincarnation of, you know, Richard Nixon levels of being a vice president, and that is Kamala Harris, and she will give her remarks, so we will look over that and discuss that.
And to all the leaders who are here and have been are fighting to make sure every woman in our nation, every person in our nation can access the care they need, and in particular reproductive health care. So, this is a fight for freedom. The fundamental freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not having her government tell her what to do. 2 years ago today, I think many of us remember where we were. 2 years ago today, the highest court in our land, the Court of Thurgood and RBG, took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. And 2 years ago, on that day, I actually made a prediction that overturning Roe v. Wade would be the opening shot on a full-on assault, state by state, on reproductive freedom. And that is exactly what happened. Over the past 2 years, in states across our nation, extremists have proposed and passed laws that criminalize doctors and punish women, laws that limit access to contraception and to fertility treatments like IVF, even some of them trying to revive laws from the 1800s. Today in America, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age lives in a state with an abortion ban, many with no exception even for rape or incest. Today, our daughters know fewer rights than their grandmothers.
Notice how everything is always framed as this fight for freedom, this yin and yang battle of morality and democracy. Every single situation, it seems the fate of the world is at stake. To all the leaders that have been fighting, she says, which is a fight that certainly doesn't come from the Democratic Party. We must make sure every woman can reach their reproductive care, she says. So you mean to tell me that Kamala Harris predicted that there would be an onslaught of states taking the right to choose and conjured up no plan to either make it hard for states to do that or to block it prior? The decision got leaked on May 2nd, so that means that not just Kamala Harris, but all the Democrats knew over a month in advance that abortion rights were going to get flipped, and still they did nothing. Kamala Harris couldn't have just come up with that thought the day of Dobbs versus Jackson. That had to have been something she was thinking up in between the initial leaks and the official release. It's already something in their radar, and it was already something on their radar and in their minds, and they decided to do nothing. Now, I'm not denying the severe rollback in individual rights and the denial of health care and the ostracism of doctors and whatnot, because all of that has been happening. However, we really only have one entity to blame for the reason girls today know less rights than their grandmother, and that's the Democratic Party.
This is a healthcare crisis, and we all know who was to blame: Donald Trump. And how do we know? Well, as many of you know, I'm a former prosecutor, so let's just look at the facts, shall we? When he was in the White House, Donald Trump handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court because he intended for them to overturn Roe v. Wade. And as he intended, they did. So, it was premeditated. Since extremist legislators across our nation have passed ban after ban after ban, he had accomplices. And Trump has not denied much less shown remorse for his actions. Instead, he, quote, proudly takes credit for overturning Roe. My fellow Americans, in a court of law, that would be called an admission. And some would say a confession, all pointing to the ultimate issue. In the case of the stealing of reproductive freedom from the women of America, Donald Trump is guilty.
We have a healthcare crisis, she states. It'll be explained momentarily what happened the last two times we had some type of crisis and what the Democrats did. But another thing you must be aware of is how every single hiccup, every single wrongdoing, every single evil done can all apparently be attributed back to and originated from Trump. When Donald Trump was in the White House, he elected 3 Supreme Court justices with the intention for them to vote for Roe v. Wade, for them to vote for overturn of Roe v. Wade. That's okay. That's how politics works. It's not like he did anything outside the legal bounds of authority. He was in a position to capitalize, and he simply took that opportunity, which is something the Democrats never ever tend to do. In fact, that is not something that just all of a sudden got schemed up during the presidency of Trump. The Republican Party that had been getting conjured up clear as day since the Reagan administration. Why on earth would Donald Trump not be proud of a decades-long achievement? And they could never outright admit that this is a decades-long plan achieved by the conservatives, because then they know they would be implying or admitting by proxy that they've known about this for decades and did nothing even when they promised, and at times had every chance to do so. And another thing you have to notice is they just have is another thing you have to notice is they just have no choice. Their tails wag at the fact of when they're able to use such verbiage to make Trump seem like he's a grand criminal that got away with the heist of the century. They have to continue to dish out this linguistic programming of their viewers. Apparently, anything and everything Trump and only Trump and his movement do are criminal. Everything is a crime against humanity.
And over the past 2 years, we have seen the impact of these Trump abortion bans, the horrific, heartbreaking reality that women have been facing every single day in our country. Women have been refused care during a miscarriage, turned away from the emergency room, and only given care when they develop sepsis. We have seen attacks on IVF. Women denied the freedom to make some of the most personal decisions in their lives. And understand, as much harm as he has already caused, a second Trump term would be even worse. His friends in the United States Congress are trying to pass a national ban that would outlaw abortion in every single state, in states like New York and California, and even right here in Maryland. And we all know if Donald Trump gets the chance, he will sign that ban. And how do we know? Well, when Congress tried to pass a national ban in 2017, he endorsed it. And he promised to sign it if it got to his desk. And now he wants us to believe he will not sign a national abortion ban. Look, enough with the gaslighting.
What do you say to Democratic voters who argue, wait a minute, we worked really hard to elect a Democratic president and vice president, Democratic-led House, a Democratic-led Senate. Do it now.
But do what now? What now? I mean, listen, what we did, we extended the child tax credit for the
Well,
first
I'm
year.
sorry, when I say do
right?
what,
Yeah.
do it now.
And if we needed any more proof on where he stands on this issue, Donald Trump just announced he has already decided who his running mate will be. Without knowing that person's name, we already know it is someone who wants to ban abortion. Every person on his short list either supported a ban in their state or supported a national ban. And it doesn't stop there. If there were a second Trump term, he has admitted that he is, quote, looking at restrictions on contraception. And pay close attention to how his friends in the United States Senate obstructed a bill to protect the right to contraception.
Now, those
not
were
once,
the remarks,
not twice,
Kamala Harris,
but 3 times.
and
So it comes down to this. Donald Trump thinks
like
the government is in a
all of
better
what she
position
said
to tell women
was that
what's
important,
in their best
but
interest
actually
than women are
there's
to
a
know
lot of
for
obfuscating
themselves.
going on.
But Joe Biden and I trust women.
A lot of, the simple case of every accusation in this.
And women trust all
So
of us
we're gonna be going
to
over,
fight for their
the-
most fundamental freedoms.
why that is.
And fight we will. And fight we will. And as I travel our country, it is clear that most Americans do believe one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. And when Congress passes a law that restores the reproductive freedoms of Roe, our President, Joe Biden, will sign it into law. Indeed. So here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. It's going to take all of us to get there.
So right here in this clip, this is before Obama became president, and he's being asked about the Freedom of Choice Act, and this is what he's gonna say.
What would you do at the federal level, not only to ensure access to abortion, but to make sure that the judicial nominees that you will inevitably be able to pick are true to the core tenets of Roe v. Wade?
Well, the first thing I'd do as president is sign the Freedom of Choice Act. That's the first thing that I'd do.
So he says the first thing he would do is sign the Freedom of Choice Act, right? Now Obama is president now, and Jesus. Now Obama's president, and he has a supermajority, a filibuster-proof Democratic supermajority, and this is what he has to say now that he's the president.
Is working with groups both in the pro-choice camp and in the pro-life camp to see if we can arrive at some consensus on that. Now, the Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority. Both in the pro-choice camp and in the pro-life camp, to see if we can. The Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority. I believe that women should.
Freedom of Choice Act is not his highest legislative priority, even when he had a filibuster-proof supermajority, and even when he said to that lady that was the first thing he was going to get handled, he still did nothing for you. So right now, today, as of me recording this video, June 24th, 2024, it marks the 2-year anniversary of the Dobbs v. Jackson decision, which was the decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. And we will be going over what this has meant for the country the last 2 years, if this could have been prevented.
Of course, we know that when Joe Biden was on the 2020 debate stage, he said that he would make Roe v. Wade an ironclad right.
We will be discussing all of that.
Of course, that never happened.
And there has been multiple instances where the Democrats could have codified Roe v. Wade, and that would use a federal authority to invalidate anti-abortion state laws. It makes clear no state government shall enact or enforce any law, rule, regulation, standard, or other provision having the force and effect of law that conflicts with any provisions of this act.
Both in the pro-choice camp and in the pro-life camp, to see if we can arrive at some consensus on that. Now, the Freedom of Choice Act is not my highest legislative priority.